Hey, good morning, y'all. Josh's Severe Weather. Happy Friday to you. We made it through another week here and a lot to talk about. And first of all, before I get to the next forecast segment here, I want to let you all know that my prayers are with those that have been impacted by the tornadoes, especially in Alabama and Georgia as well. It's just an awful situation. And sadly, these folks are not out of the woods for more tornadoes later this year. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, but in a place that's used to seeing tornadoes, nobody's used to seeing their house just get demolished and lives taken. That is very sad. It's something that unfortunately is out of our control. In my opinion, it's in God's hands. But I just want to let you all know that even though I'm here to predict weather and save lives, I still have a lot of empathy for those that are impacted by weather. It means a lot. Me personally, I've been through supercell storms, microbursts. I've survived a couple of hurricanes growing up in Louisiana. I've seen what it can do to a community. And obviously, it tears people apart when things like that happen, but it also has the opportunity to bring people together. You see wonderful organizations like the Cajun Navy and others going in to help after a big storm. The response is amazing. And I just wanted to get that out there before I talk about the weather because I think it's important that we're all human beings and that we're all here to support one another. So anyway, I am going to talk about the weekend and what it looks like here in the east with potential for snow. And when I say weekend, later today into tomorrow. And then, unfortunately, I've got bad news to bring, and that is yet again another tornado outbreak I'm looking at here for next week, probably Wednesday into Thursday. So the cycle kind of repeats itself. So far this year, we've already had 19 severe thunderstorm watches and 19 tornado watches and 4 severe thunderstorm watches. So 12 days into 2023, and we've had almost 2 watches a day. And of course, some of those days busier than others. And that pattern looks like it's going to continue next week, at least once, if not twice. But some interesting things going on here in the east. First of all, a lot of cold air pouring in, so we're going to see mountain snow, but also snowflakes likely from some bands coming off of Lake Michigan, and enough instability for maybe some light snow to fall today and tonight over Middle Tennessee, Northeast Alabama, Northern Georgia, and of course in the mountains. I do expect that. I don't think that should shock anybody, but some places could see maybe their first snowflakes of the year, believe it or not, or of the winter. Farther north and east, a big snowfall across the St. Lawrence Valley, Quebec seeing a lot of snow, northern Maine seeing snow. We are watching low pressure. The upper low that's going to be forming over the Carolinas today and tonight could produce enough instability for some wet snowflakes in places like Raleigh and maybe Wilmington, all the way to Myrtle Beach, Fayetteville. But I don't think this is going to be a really big deal. If you're up early in the morning tomorrow morning, you may see a bit of snow, but I'm highlighting it because I do think it's possible. I don't think it's going to be a big deal, though, with the ground being so warm. A bigger concern for those of you in coastal New England is low pressure that'll form off the North Carolina coast today and move up the coast over the weekend, and it may push enough moisture back in for heavy snow to fall over southeastern Massachusetts, and maybe snow changing over to some mixed precipitation like sleet and eventually rain over down east Maine as well as New Brunswick into Nova Scotia. Maybe some heavy snow sets up in here as well. And then I'm going to talk about the threat for more tornadoes and severe weather next week in some of the places that just saw it yesterday, and then even farther back into Texas, Louisiana, and southeast Oklahoma with yet another active storm track. And between these two storms, there will be a storm early next week that could produce a little severe weather, but I'm more concerned about the one that's coming in behind it. If you're in the west, unfortunately, we've got more rain coming into California, heavy mountain snow with these next 2 storms. I do think after about the 20th of January, we start to see that track finally shifting northward and providing some relief from the relentless pattern of heavy rain, flooding, massive winds and waves that have impacted California. So the HRRR model, that stands for the hourly or the high resolution rapid refresh model, shows you guys the potential for snowfall here through tomorrow night. This is 1 a.m. on 1 a.m. on Sunday morning. And obviously heavy snowfall here with our main storm center. We also see significant snow falling across the mountains of West Virginia and also the mountains of North Carolina. But several bands of light to moderate snow will fall today and tonight over parts of the Ohio Valley. I don't think it's going to amount to really anything, but we could see a persistent band somewhere in here, especially when you get onto the Cumberland Plateau, that could drop a quick inch of wet snow. A lot of this probably doesn't stick to the ground unless you're in the higher elevations. where the ground will be colder, but definitely some significant snow falling across a large area of the country that really hasn't had that much yet this winter. You can see a few dots here in North Carolina, Virginia, New Jersey. The model's trying to output enough snow to maybe try to stick to the ground, but I don't think it's going to be of any real significance. Just kind of what I call a novelty, maybe minor nuisance event here in central and southern North Carolina into South Carolina. I'm going to zoom into the Northeast real quick so you guys can see that heavy snow over New Brunswick, the potential for over 2 feet likely to fall here over the next 36 to 48 hours, and also the potential for some heavy snow to fall over the mountains of West Virginia, and maybe a band setting up off of Erie as well for southwest New York and northwestern Pennsylvania, and maybe a little bit off of Ontario. Let me zoom into the Carolinas so you guys can see the northwest flow event here as well. And this is through the HRRR model. Let me go back one run for you guys here and zoom things forward. And you guys can see most of the snow falls today, tonight, first thing tomorrow morning, but potential for 10, maybe 12 inches of snow up on Clingman's Dome, 3 to 6 inches here in the Blue Ridge, maybe a few inches as well around Grandfather and Sugar and Beach Mountains. And interestingly, the banding here could produce an inch or so of snow, maybe even 2 on the Cumberland Plateau. In between the Cumberland Plateau and the Smokies, we have that rip-off zone that could include places like Greenville, Tennessee, and Knoxville. We may see flakes, but not really much anything. And then here in the Carolinas, the models are trying to show enough instability, enough moisture, and enough lift aloft for maybe some rain changing over to a few wet snowflakes here after midnight tonight, and then ending in the morning tomorrow. So this is not going to be a big deal, but I would not be shocked if we saw enough snow to maybe coat the grass in a few places, or a few cars here in Wake County, North Carolina, and maybe down to the south, places like Sampson County and in the Fayetteville area, Cumberland County, maybe even down to Myrtle Beach. But I mean, this is not really going to be a big deal. If you see a flake, just consider it lucky. By the way, it could be a little bit interesting here around Virginia Beach tomorrow night, a little bit of a band of cold air coming in off the water. So we'll see if this even plays out. It's a little bit far-fetched in my opinion. I want to look at, I'll come back to that real quick. Here's the GFS model. You can see it tries to spit out a little bit of snow here in central North Carolina. I think the Weather Service shows maybe up to 0.1 inches. I really don't think it's going to happen, but I'm not saying there won't be snow maybe mixing in for a brief amount of time, but seeing enough snow to coat the ground, I think, is a little bit far-fetched at this point. You guys can see where I think it will be happening. Pretty clear cut here. We got a band of lake effect, could produce an inch into central Indiana and Kentucky. That's a pretty big stretching band as well, going all the way into Tennessee, maybe even northern Georgia, northeast Alabama. So let's look at yesterday. Because I will admit to you guys, I'm not going to say I'm surprised, but let's just say things were worse than I thought they might be. And I'm going to talk about why, because as a meteorologist, I'm not afraid to say when I'm wrong. I'm humbled by the weather every day. Don't give me the phrase, you guys are always wrong. That's not really true, but there are times where things sometimes don't work out as expected. And for various reasons. We did see the area that I've talked about for 4 days that will likely see severe weather. They got it, but some of these tornadoes were long tracked and strong, and initially didn't look like that would be the case. I mean, even the Storm Prediction Center had a slight risk in here and then an enhanced risk in here. And in my opinion, looking at the intensity of the storms that hit Alabama, we probably should have had a moderate risk before all is said and done. So why did that happen? Well, here's a significant tornado parameter from the NAM. These indices were actually lower than the ones from the previous tornado outbreaks that did not produce a lot of strong tornadoes or a long track tornado. So of course, if you look at the modeling, you see, okay, there will probably be a few tornadoes in here, but the chances of seeing something strong or intense aren't super high. So maybe enhanced risk is fine. And of course, the areas were pretty good, central Alabama into the southwestern part of Atlanta and into central Georgia. The areas were picked out just fine for tornadoes. However, what happened was the air ended up warmer in here. We had more instability, a little bit more clearing, and as a result, the models under predicted the amount of instability and eventually the wind shear as well. And because of the two, we had just one really long track tornado here. I'll show you on the map, probably a 60 to 70 mile track from about Selma up into east central Alabama. I think Auburn's about here, so south of Auburn. And there were more tornado warnings from this same particular cell complex here across west central Georgia, south and west of Atlanta, LaGrange, Georgia, for example. So they're going to be surveying this. Initial estimates are maybe that it was an EF3. It's possible it could have been an EF4 in a few places. Nonetheless, it hit some areas with population, so a lot of people's lives were changed in just an instant yesterday. And if you find yourself in a situation where you're under a tornado emergency, please do not go out and film it like we saw on Weather Nation yesterday. You could get struck by lightning. Debris from 50 miles away could fly out and hit you with a strong tornado. A violent rotating column of air can pick up debris and blow it 50 to 100 miles away. And if you're in the state of Alabama, that should not shock you one bit. We have had quite a history of tornadoes that have been intense. So definitely things were pretty crazy yesterday, and I really don't have a lot more to talk about it other than that my thoughts and prayers are with you guys, because it really is a difficult situation. I want to talk about the outlook for the additional potential for tornadoes next week. So I'm looking at the European ensemble. We'll see we've got another storm that will develop in the plains Sunday night and Monday, and that is going to track all the way up into Wisconsin and Michigan. Behind it, I'm a little bit more concerned about a more southerly track. You guys can see Oklahoma, Northeast Texas, and into western Arkansas Wednesday afternoon, a southern track storm. And the low pressure centers generally follow the Ohio River here Wednesday night into Thursday. A very similar storm track to what we had yesterday. Actually a little bit farther south on some of these members. So this storm track into milder air once again looks like it's going to set the stage for severe weather down south Wednesday and especially on Thursday. This is the European ensemble. This is the upper air chart, and you guys can see the big storm on its way out here this weekend. The next storm comes across on Sunday night and Monday. We have an active southerly jet here across southern Cal and the southwestern United States. And that doesn't look super intense, but there may be a little bit of severe weather here Monday night into Tuesday. The next piece, though, is more intense. That comes through Texas here on Wednesday morning. And you guys can see the 500 millibar jet intensifies, and we're talking 80 to 90 knot winds at 500 millibars Wednesday night into Thursday. And here is kind of where the most intense wind aloft is Thursday morning. We can see a large growing area right across Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. We call this Dixie Alley here for Thursday. This is similar to, this is yesterday's model, and you guys can see where it had the jet streak yesterday, right across Mississippi and Alabama. This was right at 1 o'clock Eastern, noon Central time yesterday. This is the European initialization, basically. And here's where the model has that same area getting hit on Thursday at the same time. It's like 1 week apart. 18Z Thursday the 12th, 18Z Thursday the 19th. Deja vu all over again. And so because of that, I'm definitely concerned about there being the potential for more tornadoes. I can't tell you for sure where exactly, the exact timing with this being 6 days out, but the area I'm highlighting is very familiar with severe weather. We've had it quite a bit already. The European operational model shows where storms may be Wednesday morning into the early afternoon. So we're looking at East Texas, Southeast Oklahoma. And then at night, we're looking at Louisiana and southern Arkansas, and then tracking into Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, the operational European farther south than the ensembles. So we could translate this farther north. The Canadian, on the other hand, doesn't show lightning, but this is the Cape. That's a convective available potential energy. And you guys can see on Wednesday, pretty good chance that we'll see instability for thunderstorms on Wednesday. And kind of the core stretches northeastward here. This is Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, and we're highlighting central and eastern Alabama and western Georgia, as well as maybe a line of storms all the way up into Indiana and Kentucky. So if you're in the Ohio River Valley, the Tennessee Valley, well, I think the chance for more intense storms stays just to your south. I would be preparing for potential severe weather, including some tornadoes during the day on Thursday here across Kentucky, Tennessee, maybe even southern Indiana and Illinois, depending on the storm track. And then as that spreads eastward Thursday evening, we could still have severe weather moving into the Appalachians and especially across Georgia and northern Florida Thursday night. And then as we get later into the night, we may have some thunderstorms moving into Virginia and central North Carolina and South Carolina. But you can see, much like the last storm, we start to lose the instability that can fuel more intense storms. Not to say we couldn't have heavy rain, strong winds, and maybe some lightning, but the severe weather threat looks to be more limited to this general region in here during the afternoon on Thursday. And I'll show you guys the Canadian model as well. As we lose the East Coast storm here over the weekend, of course, New England gets backed in with some snow and maybe some sleet and a little bit of rain right on the May Seacoast. The next storm you can see tracks right around Omaha and Kansas City on Monday, and then that will cut up into the Chicagoland area. And there's not as much wind aloft here to produce a widespread severe weather event. There will be some rain and maybe some thunderstorms down south, but I don't think this is going to be a big outbreak. The next one, though, that moves into the west here, you can see this big low battering Northern California Sunday night into Monday, comes right in north of the Bay Area Monday morning. That is going to regenerate as it moves across and into the Gulf of Mexico region on Wednesday, and that will be tracking across Oklahoma, Arkansas, and then up to the north and east. And this is Thursday around lunchtime. And yet again, the same areas are under the gun that were this time yesterday. So almost exactly 1 week apart. We've got a big storm tracking up into the Great Lakes from Texas and Oklahoma. A lot of wind aloft. You can see how tight the thickness lines here, indicating an intense jet stream and an intense air mass change with snow in Kansas and very warm, humid air on the central Gulf Coast here Thursday morning. So I think the potential is here to see a few more strong tornadoes in maybe the same areas that got hit just yesterday. So really, it's deja vu all over again if the models are right. We'll continue to monitor that for you all, but I do appreciate your time today. And listen, I appreciate it if you could subscribe to my YouTube channel, like this video, and share with others. I would love to be wrong, but the ingredients look to be pretty impressive here, just 6 days in advance for this potential tornado outbreak again next week on the 18th and 19th of January. So keep that in mind if you are planning to travel. Y'all, I really appreciate your time. If there's anything that you have questions that you may have about the weather, I'm going to do my best to answer them for you. I think here in the South, we are going to have a very active tornado season. Once we get into a cooler weather pattern in a couple of weeks, we get a break in February where the severe weather is going to be a lot less active. But then early March, I think the pattern recycles itself as we start to see a fading La Nina. So we have a transitional La Nina, warming air and intensifying Pacific jet. And then I think it could really could get bad here in mid to late April, much like we saw in 2011. But again, that's 3 months out, so anything could change. But just be ready. I think what we had yesterday was kind of the warm-up act for what's going to end up being a very intense spring with tornadoes down south and maybe even onto the plains later in the spring into the early summer. So if you have any prayer requests, I am happy to pray for you or any of the people that are loved ones for you. I'm happy to pray for America and the world with all of the unrest that we have today. I believe that I've been called to do this as a child of God through Jesus Christ. I've been called to be a forecaster, but also called to serve the greater kingdom as a Christian. And my verse today to you is that it's from James 1:2-8. James talks about trials and temptations, which all of us I know are dealing with difficult times. But James 1:2 says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do." And that last line really hits you hard, doesn't it? We're all going to be tested. We're all going to have temptations. We're all going to have trials. For me as a meteorologist, I don't want to take it personally that yesterday didn't quite work out as I had hoped it would. I was really hoping we'd get by with not a lot of tornado action, maybe straight line winds. I was hoping we'd get by without fatalities, but unfortunately, there are things that we just cannot control. We have to put our faith in God. We have to persevere. We have to learn from our mistakes and from things like this that can come up and give us many trials. For me, I am learning every day and trying to become the best meteorologist I can be. My goal is not to overhype things. I don't want to cry wolf about everything. There are people that do that. but I also don't want to be caught by surprise. And so for me, my goal this year in 2023 is not to be double-minded and unstable in everything I do, but it's to expect that the Lord will give me the wisdom that I need, and will, even though I'm going to sin and have faults, that when I ask God to give me a vision, that He will provide it to me. I don't want to be a person of doubt, somebody who's going to get tossed like by the wind into a wave of the sea. Not somebody that doesn't expect to receive favor or anything from the Lord. And I ask that if you're one of those people that struggles with your faith, that you maybe just take a look at this and maybe read a little bit in the Word every day. If you're not a believer and you're frustrated by the fact that I'm spending time even talking about this, listen, I completely understand that as well, because for about 30 years of my life, I was the person that turned away from God, that did not have faith, that kind of honestly cursed that kind of thing. And then yet God showed Himself to me through some important people in my life, through just a couple of glimpses, just a tiny thin thread, and I was able to kind of grow in my understanding of what I was missing out on. And that was the ability to serve the kingdom, the ability to live a meaningful life, and the ability to have eternal life given to me, despite my lack of holiness, but just through the grace and the gift of God, and that's His Son, Jesus Christ, who I'm excited to meet in heaven one day. So I thank you all for your time today. I appreciate the fact that this channel is growing, that there are people here that are believers that are encouraging and thanking me. But I really hope that just one person who watched this today, who may be struggling, maybe receive some word that they weren't expecting to, and maybe can act on it. That's my goal today. That's my hope. So thank you all for your time today. I love you, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I will try to get you another video tomorrow and some updates as we look at this snow here. All right, take care, everybody. God bless you.